When large jobs require moving massive amounts of snow, get the work done quickly and efficiently with the Western Pile Driver and all-new Pile Driver XL pusher plows, both featuring Trace Edge technology. These pushers scrape down to the pavement with an advanced cutting-edge system that has independent 2-foot sections that move vertically, oscillate, and trip. Get more jobs done faster with the Western Pile Driver lineup of pusher plows.
Mike Bott from Frost Solutions, one of the owners of the company. What we do is provide a mini weather station to give you a tailored forecast to those particular locations so you know where and when and what to do in those parts of town. You know there's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different ways that people can experience tremendous value having a technology like this.
Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey with your host, Dave Westcott. The Entrepreneurial Journey is a weekly podcast that streams live every Tuesday at 9:15 a.m. Pacific on Dave's YouTube channel and LinkedIn profile. Now here's Dave with this week's episode.
Good morning and welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey. I'm your host, Dave Westcott, and I have with me this morning special guest Ryan Hogan, co-founder and CEO of Talent Harbor. Ryan, good morning.
Morning. Thanks for having me, Dave. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. I'm so glad you're on the show. I'm running through your bio, and you've got this business called Hunt a Killer.
Yeah.
I just love the name.
That's
right? Like I love the name.
Yeah. Well, the company before that was called Run for Your Lives. So like it's always been about having like these edgy names, and I've got really good luck with the companies that actually hit some sort of traction. It's always weird names.
I love the name Hunt a Killer. You know, the thing that I'm always looking for in business is you're always looking for killers, man. You're looking for those A players, right? And so to hunt a killer, I mean, that makes me want to do business with you. Like, I'm just like, oh my God, like we got, this is crazy. Hunt a killer. That's my dream team, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, what's interesting about this is like once we actually get into the story, you're going to be like, how did you get into Talent Harbor? Because that's going to be the natural next question. Because Hunt a Killer was exactly what you think. It was not B2B. I probably could have named my current talent search firm Hunt a Killer, but Hunt a Killer literally was a murder mystery. So it's but that was a wild ride, and quite a bit of pain and quite a bit of success as well.
So you grew this. So Talent Harbor, tell us about Talent Harbor.
Yeah, Talent Harbor. Let me start with Hunt a Killer because like that's how Talent Harbor started.
All right.
And Hunt a Killer was an immersive murder mystery experience. It still is. It's under new ownership at this point. We sold to a strategic about a year and a half ago. But the whole premise of it was a murder mystery in a box. And so it was sending clues, items, correspondence, police reports, case files, doing that each month. We did it episodically. Each season had 6 episodes. And this was back in the days of like Loot Crate and Birchbox and some of those other subscription products. We grew and scaled that from 0 to $55 million in 6 years. We wound up getting into retail distribution. And the reason for retail was one of the things that we saw probably about halfway through was like the Loot Crates and the Birchboxes. A lot of these companies were going bankrupt. And so we did some research and we realized that like at a certain scale, it's going to become cost prohibitive to continue to acquire customers. And so we pivoted into retail. Retail did really well. Another longer story, I deployed during it because I'm still in the Navy Reserves and I got a tap on the shoulder. So that was a whole 10-month adventure of trying to lead that company from the Mediterranean and off the coast of Africa. But Talent Harbor is exactly what you would think. It's finding amazing talent for incredible organizations. And probably the most common question that I get is like, how do you go from murder mysteries? And then the company before that was called Run for Your Lives, a zombie-infested 5K obstacle course race. Like, how do you go from that into talent acquisition? And for me, it's been very easy because the biggest problem that I've had throughout all of my companies has been finding incredible talent. And Hunt a Killer was in a very fortunate position, probably about 2 years in, where we could afford to cut a 30, 40, to find our CFO, we cut a $90,000 check. And so like we were in a fortunate position where we could afford that sort of thing. The reality is that talent acquisition is a core competency, but it's also out of reach for most small, medium-sized businesses. And so Talent Harbor was our way of coming into an industry that's archaic, that's just ridiculous for so many reasons, and just kind of rebuilding it from scratch. And so like we started with the business model, which is we do something called recruiting as a service. And it's just like Hunt to Killer was a subscription, so is our recruiting. And when you need it, you turn us on. And when you don't, you put us on pause, and we just come in, do great work. We go hunting, mostly hunting for hunters. And that's kind of the genesis.
Very interesting. So I want to get to the root of all this, right? Because, you know, it's very interesting. So did you join the military, the Navy? Did you join that before your entrepreneurial journey started, or did those things kind of happen at the same time? What happened first?
The only reason I say entrepreneurship is because like I've been selling like Hogan creepy crawlers since third grade. I mean, that was like my whole shtick was like, if I could create value, if I could sell something. And so I used to take these custom orders. If you remember what the easy bake oven, creepy crawlers was like the easy bake oven for boys.
Yep.
But like from that to shoveling snow to mowing grass to washing cars, like you name it, I was always kind of like tinkering in the entrepreneurship realm. But I did join the military at 17. My mom signed my permission slip, which was very nice of her. And the military really kind of gave me discipline and direction because I had this energy, but it was probably being applied in places it shouldn't be applied. And so the thing that the military did for me was really kind of help me figure out like how to channel this. And then so once entrepreneurship kind of came back in my life and I had some capacity, it was a completely different ball game at that point.
Okay. So I got it figured. So I love it. So you start out as an entrepreneurial, you're hustling creepy callers for pogs on the side of the road. You're getting dollars in the bank. Like this thing is happening. Then you're washing cars, you're mowing lawns. You're just hustling, right? Just straight from knee high to a grasshopper. You're moving. You get into the military. They give you some discipline. It helps harness the energy. You get back out. And if I got it right, Run for Your Lives is the first real entrepreneurial deal that you do, and it's a 5K obstacle course filled with zombies. Is that?
Yeah, that's correct. And like everything's been a journey. What's interesting is there's probably 3 companies that have found some semblance of product market fit. Like I've probably had 100 companies, I've probably had 10,000 ideas, but there's probably been 3, Talent Harbor, Run for Your Lives, and Hunt to Killer, that have found product market fit. The reason that Run for Your Lives came about was because I had this t-shirt company. So I was deployed to Thailand, and I met this guy that can make suits. And I get back home and I'm spending $30 for moisture wicking t-shirts in the military. I was buying Under Armour. And I'm from Baltimore, so there's like a lot of hometown. I went to University of Maryland eventually once I got into this commissioning program in the military. So like there's a lot of like things around Kevin Plank and Under Armour and stuff like that. But I was like, there's got to be a cheaper way to do this. So I created Warwear. And I went back to that tailor and I was like, do you know anybody that can put together moisture wicking performance t-shirts at a low cost? And he said yes. And so I bought a lot of t-shirts from his cousin in Bangladesh. And let's just say quality control was not where it should have been. And it was some painful lessons. And the lesson there was like, 1, if you build it, they don't come. And number 2 is like, I had $125,000 of inventory. So I'm enlisted E5. I'm doing test and development in the back of helicopters in Pax River. And I've got a 2-car garage that is filled to the ceiling with t-shirts. And I was like, I don't know how to move these. Like nobody's buying them. Everybody was so excited that was like close to me, but nobody wound up pulling the trigger. And so I opened up a Men's Health and I saw this ad for Warrior Dash. And I had just called Men's Health like 2 weeks prior to be like, hey, how much is advertising? It's like 150,000 back in 2008-ish. And I was like, well, if Warrior Dash can afford that type of advertising, then obviously there's some sort of business here. So I called my best friend from elementary school and I said, I'm going to start an adventure race. And the reason for that was I needed a way to move all those t-shirts that were in our 2-car garage because we needed some place to put the vehicles. And so we started Run for Your Lives. And it was just supposed to be a kind of a Warrior Dash copycat, one event, move a whole bunch of inventory. But then like we started looking at different things, and it was like run for your lives is pretty cool if like you're running away from something. And we started looking at like genres and trends, and we saw that The Walking Dead was like just on the brink of really getting traction. And so we were like, well, what if everybody had to wear a flagged football belt, and then we put 250 zombies on the course? The entire course would be immersive and thematic for a post-apocalyptic universe. And if they got through the course with at least one flag belt remaining, then they were alive and they could go to the survivor zone. And if not, then they were a zombie, and you get different medals, different prizes, things like that.
Wow, that's awesome. And how many of these races did you do?
Well, we thought we were only going to do one. And we thought that I'd move the inventory, and then I was going to be like, hey, Derek, that was amazing. Thanks so much. I'm going back to Warware. So we were expecting about 5,000 people at our first event, and 12,000 people showed up to this very small town in Harford County, Maryland. There's still small paper reports about what we did to traffic and congestion. There was not many happy people that day. But we wound up doing one our first year. So that was 2011. We went from 1 to 13 events in 2012. And then we tried to get through 27 events in 2013. And that's when the bottom dropped out, the market dropped. And like, what does Warren Buffett say? When the sea goes out, you can see who's naked. We were butt ass naked at that point. So when demand dropped, we were in a pinch.
Wow. Okay. So that's run for your lives, and you're literally running for your life to the next thing. So what was next? How did the next idea come in? How did you put that together? I mean, I got to imagine you've got run for your lives. You're trying to get through the events. Like you say, the bottom falls out, the sea goes out, you see who's naked, all of these things happen, and you've got to rebound from that. One, you've got to rebuild yourself mentally, I've got to imagine. Like there's some mental rebuilding, there's some thought processing. Okay, we had some great successes. What went wrong? What did we love about this? And then what did we take to our next venture that we learned from venture one that allowed us to kind of get this moving? And I think so many entrepreneurs, like they do one and then they're done. They never go back, right? So you said, okay, I'm going back, and you've now gone back a couple of times. And if you've had 100 businesses, then you keep going back. So this should be 50 Shades of Gray, not the entrepreneurial journey. But but I got to know what happens.
Yeah, that's so when Run for Your Lives bankrupted, I was actually going through something in the Navy called the Seaman to Admiral program. So the Navy, I'd been putting together packages for 3 years, and my military career didn't start out squeaky free. We'll leave it at that. But it took me quite a few times to get into this program called Seaman to Admiral. And basically what they do is they pull you out of whatever your billet is. So for me, I was a helicopter crewman. They pulled me out of those orders. I was in Pax River at the time. And they say, you can go to any school you want to in the country. So I chose University of Maryland. So I was going through the University of Maryland. I was like Billy Madison there because I had 2-3 kids at the time, and everybody's showing up in their Uggs and sweatpants and drunk. And I'm like, I put a baby to sleep last night, and whatever the case may be. But when the company bankrupted, it was really interesting because I'd also just graduated. And there were some trip ups. I was supposed to be a pilot, and the stresses that you talked about were very real. I think what most people don't see is that when someone goes bankrupt or a company goes bankrupt, everybody's like, oh, for the founder, for the leaders, it's actually the biggest pressure release valve you can ever. So it's not an old moment for the founders. For me, it was I don't want to say joyful, because it's not joy to like hurt other organizations or other contractors, other people, but things just stop. And what they don't see is that 12 to 18 months before, like you were just doing everything you can to try and save that company. So I wound up commissioning at the same time, lost my pilot spot because of some of the stressors, wound up becoming a surface warfare officer, moved out to San Diego to drive ships for a few years. And that's I think kind of the heart or the essence of what you're getting at is like that was the rebuild phase. Like I was able to find solace in writing and helping other people, and that's kind of what gave me energy. That's what kind of like warmed me back up to getting back into entrepreneurship. Was still, of course, launching companies. I think I had 2 or 3. And then eventually this guy came to me, and he became somewhat of a Reddit mentor to me. And he was like, what are you doing? I was into software. I won't bore you with the entire story, but I was getting into software, and he was like, you have no experience in software. You should not be doing this. Like, your background's experiential. Go do that and see if you can hit it again. So the minute he said that, I called Derek back. Derek and I took a couple of years off. We're still best friends, but a couple of years off. And I was like, hey, let's do it again. Let's run it back. And we used the same sort of methodology. So the first thing we did is we looked at like emerging trends back in 2015, 2016. And obviously zombies had died. But what was coming out was things like escape rooms. The murder mystery podcasts were everywhere. And so we looked at the trends and we looked at the experiences and we said, like, there's no experience for this emerging trend. And so we did the same thing. We put together an event. It was called, obviously, Hunt to Killer. But the event, while we were able to sell it out, we could put 15, 20,000 people through Run for Your Lives. For the event, for Hunt to Killer, you can't have thousands of people standing around a crime scene. And so while it was a success, while we found product market fit, or at least we believed we did, we just couldn't scale that platform. So that's when we looked across the industry for a different business model. We found subscription boxes and we said, what if we take this event, put it into a box and ship it to front doorsteps each month?
Wow. And then you decide to do that, and then bingo.
Bingo. It wasn't like, I think there's some stories that are like, no, it's not a bingo. It was bingo. Like I've never grown an organization that fast. And I think, one of the lessons, probably the biggest heartache I had after the first failure was this idea of like, I couldn't get back to where we were. I was like, life is over, business is done. Never will I ever achieve what we achieved there. And what I've learned over the years, and it just continues to validate, is like entrepreneurship is really like when you're going up a roller coaster and you hear that clicking, that clicking that's happening is a safety feature. And so basically, as you're getting pulled up the roller coaster, if the chain breaks, if the chain stops, there's a safety mechanism so you don't go backwards. And you might go backwards in money or revenue or some of these other things, but you don't go backwards in experience. You don't go backwards in network. And those are the things that allow you to be able to scale again. And so Hunt to Killer far exceeded all expectations. I think we got from 0 to 300,000 MRR in the first like 2.5 months. And we knew immediately that we had something. That's not to say it was easy. I think there was a lot of excitement. We kind of figured a lot of things out. We blew past, Hunt to Killer was about an $8 million company. We blew past that in about year and a half. But that's not to say that like there was no issues. We learned a lot more.
Yeah, there's always issues. There's always issues. For the audience, what is MRR?
Monthly recurring revenue.
Cool. I just want to make sure that anybody listening, they don't get lost in they don't get lost. And so that's awesome. Monthly reoccurring revenue. That's what he's talking about. Now, when you built this business, am I correct? I just want to make sure I got it right. You scaled this from 0 to 55 million in 72 months, 6 years.
Yeah.
So
it was a little quicker than that, but yeah.
So
that's the highlight.
The neighbors are paying off the Ford Escape, and you're building a $50 million business, and that's pretty phenomenal. And end scale was 205 million.
That was cumulative. So 205 million was like the cumulative dollars that we put through the entire organization over that 6 years.
Okay. That is an amazing feat. So you get to 6 years, you're there, and then I believe you said you went through a strategic acquisition.
We did.
So you sold.
We sold.
And you sold to like PE?
No, we sold to another game industry or another game company in the industry. So I had deployed. I mean, I guess I should have known that like I was on a deployment schedule, but in the Navy Reserves, like, the last thing you're thinking about, especially during COVID, is like, oh, I'm going to be tapped to go deploy. And I got tapped to go deploy. So we had just raised about $12.5 million. It was the end of 2022. 2021. And literally like a week after Christmas, I get a phone call from the Navy and they're like, hey, start getting your affairs in order. In 3 months, you're going to be shipping out to the USNS Trenton, which was forward deployed out to the Mediterranean, just kind of running back and forth. And so that was a very interesting conversation with investors. And then very quickly, like, we ran on EOS. And so I was the visionary. So very quickly, like, I had to go find some sort of integrator to make sure that we could operate the day to day while I was gone. I didn't know at that point, like, what my level of communication or connection level was going to be. So we had to put a lot of things in place in the blind. Fast forward, got back home about a year later. Our retail business had taken off. And so our direct to consumer business started to come down. Post-COVID, iOS 14.5, which, like, we were highly susceptible to changes in the algorithm for paid advertising. And so direct to consumer was like, we're trying to figure this out, and retail was taken off. The problem for that type of dynamic is cash, because for retail, you're out of pocket for the cash for that demand for that purchase order about 6 months. Say 3 months to go ahead, 3 or 4 months to go ahead and order the product, import it, get it to the retailer, and then 2 to 3 months for the retailer to actually give you the cash for that purchase order. And so we needed to go find a strategic. So the first thing that happened when I got back, we got just kind of the house in order. We got our finances in order. We got everything kind of prepared. We went out, we got an investment banker. We spent about maybe 2 or 3 months putting together a package. We kind of executed it at the toy fair in 2023. And then we wound up selling January 26th-ish of 2024.
Now, getting an investment banker on your side to help you build that package out and then take that to market was a smart play. But that's not something that the average entrepreneur knows on their first run. So where did you learn that? Was that a mentor tip? Was that a coaching tip? Was that how did you figure that piece out?
Yeah, good question. There's 2 things that have changed my life, and when you think not about like learning on the fly. So earlier I talked about this idea of like the experience and the network that you gain is like irreplaceable and doesn't go away no matter where you're at in life. But 2 things that changed my life outside of those experiences. One is something called EOS, or the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And EOS is a framework in which to operate your business. And so it's got these core key components and accountability charts and things like that. So one, like, we were operating the business very efficiently. We understood how to manage. We understood what we were looking at and the issues that we were resolving. The second thing that changed my life is a peer group. There's many out there. There's Vistage, there's EO, there's YPO. For me, it's been Vistage. I've been in Vistage for the last 7 years. And so for the last 7 years, and I've been through like 4 different groups because I've moved all over the place, but I've had, a room every single month, a room of about 12 to 15 CEOs of businesses much larger than mine were at the time, that were talking about helping, guiding, offering advice, suggestions, wisdom, experience. And so that wasn't the first time that we actually went with a banker. We went with a banker when we raised some debt as well. But yeah, it was probably through that peer group.
That's awesome. I love that. EOS. I don't want to rabbit hole on EOS, but did you use an implementer or did you self-implement?
We self-implemented for a couple of years. So I learned about EOS actually from Dan Wallace, who's an absolute legend in the ecosystem. And Dan and I just figured this out, that he was the guest speaker in my Vistage group in Seattle at that time. Just a wild turn of events. But so when we were exposed to EOS, the first thing we did was we self-implemented. I had my entire leadership team at the time read the book Traction, and then we self-implemented.
Yep.
And then we thought we were really good and we didn't need an implementer, but we could afford an implementer. So we went out, we had an expert implementer, Margaret Dixon, out of Boulder, Colorado. The company was headquartered in Baltimore. I was living in Seattle. We had probably about 2 or 3 leaders in Seattle, and then a majority of the leadership team in Baltimore. So we would all fly into Boulder. But I remember the first day, like, we're not that we were cocky, but we were like, hey, this is easy. Like, we know what we're doing, and we're using a software to help us implement. I remember the first day with Margaret, and she was like, what the hell are you guys doing? So, like, we went through a huge transition when we self-implemented EOS, and then we went through a whole nother just like breakthrough that, probably unimaginable at the time. Once we hired an implementer.
That's awesome. Was the software that you're using 90? Was that what you guys were on?
Sure is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Love the folks over at 90.
Yeah. I know Dan as well. It's a small world. Are you in Seattle now or no?
No, we just moved to LA about 10 months ago.
Okay, so you're all over the place. All right, interesting. This could go a whole bunch of different areas, but I got to stay on focus here because this has been amazing, and the entrepreneurial journey has been so incredible and so exciting. I agree with you on EO and YPO and Vistage. If you're out there, entrepreneur, get connected, get in with those CEOs because so much learning happens in those spaces. Absolutely incredible. So you exit from this. You've found your strategic buyer. And then you're sitting around and you're thinking, okay, what am I going to do? And then you put together Talent Harbor. And I still love the name Hunt a Killer for my talent business. So I think I might have DBA'd that, but Talent Harbor is the next piece. And so you have this idea that recruiting is broken. I think that's what you mentioned at the beginning of the show. And so you basically create this recruiting as a reoccurring service, and that is crazy to think of. I'm super interested as an entrepreneur and business owner myself. What is this Talent Harbor? How do you get hooked up? How does it work? Break this down.
Yeah. So the interesting part is I was living in Newport, Rhode Island. When I actually sold the company, I was living in Newport, Rhode Island. And that's because the Navy gave me another opportunity to go to the Naval War College. And so I was spending 10 months in Newport, Rhode Island, sold the company while I was going through War College. And so like my 6 months off, I was actually still going through graduate school for the Navy. And my Vistage chair, who was still out in Seattle, because that was the last group I was a part of at that point. Now I'm in an LA group. But Tom Leonard came to me and he was like, hey kid, you're not going to be able to sit still. At that point, we're probably about 80% through the process. Meaning that like we've got 3 horses in the race for the acquisition. We know there's going to be some sort of transaction. We don't know what it's going to be yet, but we've got enough interest where we know something's going to get across the goal line. We're like looking at LOIs. And he was like, you're not going to be able to sit still. So go look at your P&L right now and pick your favorite line item, and then go do that for a while. Probably the best advice I've ever gotten in my career. And so for me, it was people. Like it's very easy, like where my eyes go on a P&L, like people, development, professional development, coaching, mentoring, everything people related. But we spent about $1 million on recruiting. And I did a deep dive into the industry, and like this whole notion of like success fee based contingent recruiting, it's been around since like the World War era. So think about how much has changed. Think about like our access to information, systems, processes, technologies, like whatever the case, all these things that change. But for some reason, you're not a recruit. Like, have you ever been in the recruiting business before I shit or poo poo all over it?
No, I'm not a recruiter.
Well, I know you're not a recruiter, but just in case.
No. I don't. You know, even if I have a best friend who's a recruiter, you can take a dump on him. Like, listen, the fees they charge are outlandish. I hate working with them. And I feel like it's a scam all the time because they're telling you this is the greatest person to fill your role, but yet they're getting paid to do it. And if they don't find it, they're going to lose the commission. And so they don't necessarily give you the best candidate. They just try to sell you on a candidate. That's my experience. I didn't mean to steal anything if that's where you were going.
Dave, that's it. Like how amazing was that? Like my whole talk track, like without even really prompting, you just like you took it. Like that's it. Like how have all of these things changed over the last 50 years? But for some reason, like how agree, like who do you have to be to think that it's still worth that? And then you just brought up something that's even more spot on than like maybe the value's not there. The contingent business model, it changes the entire mark of the transaction, meaning that your client is actually the mark. Because what you're doing is you're just finding 3 or 4 resumes, having a couple conversations, and then you are hardcore selling your client that one of those 3 is their next hire. Why is that? Because you don't get your 30% commission until they actually hire somebody. So like we've tackled all parts of the recruiting process. But the biggest thing that we changed out of the gate was the business model. So we operate on something called recruiting as a service. Just, we stole it from software as a service, so we call it RAS. But the whole idea is like, we will come in and we will do great work for our clients. And when you need us, you have it on. And when you don't, you turn it off. And, we have 6-month guarantees that come with the hires that you make. We don't nickel and dime you. Let's say, like, we've got some clients that are hiring multiple people for the same role. So we get a lot of times we get like these sales roles and they're like, I need 3 people. And we're like, that's cool. Like, you might leave our service on for an extra month to find all 3, but we're not gonna charge you extra for like hiring 3 instead. Like, we've done the same amount of work. Why do we need more money when we've done the same amount of work, whether you hire 1 person or 3 people? And so that's our whole philosophy. And the whole thing here is sometimes we get oh, well, you're incentivized to go slow. Well, if that's the case, we will never hear from you again. We will never grow again. And the reality is like, our clients come back the next time they have a recruiting initiative. So it's like, no harm, no foul. If that's how you feel, give it a month and then we go from there. But we don't have unhappy clients.
So how does it work?
Like the process?
Yeah, I mean, I don't need the secret sauce because, you got to make money at this thing. But like, if I'm a prospective client and I'm looking to recruit a sales guy, which I'm actually in the process of doing, and I actually think to myself, should I hire a recruiter? Should I drop an ad on Indeed and do 3 million interviews? Like, what is it? So like, if I come in the door and I'm like, hey, Ryan, I'm looking for a sales guy. I want a killer, right? And how does it work? What happens?
Yeah, and I'll put a caveat here too, because like, one of the things you've probably noticed is like, I've gone from like adventure races to like the tabletop game industry to now recruiting. You'd be like, well, how do you know how to do all those things? I don't know how to do any of those things. I've never created a zombie course. I've never put together a murder mystery experience. And I am not a recruiter by any stretch. My whole superpower or secret sauce is going out and finding amazing humans. And those amazing humans are my true partners. Like, they are co-founders. Like, I'm just a co-founder of Talent Harbor. It may have been my idea, my initiative, like the name, but I'm only half the equation. I'm like, what problems are we going to solve? How are we going to grow? But I partner with amazing subject matter experts. And so my partner, co-founder in Talent Harbor, 25-year expert recruiter, and she was the best recruiter we ever used at Hunt a Killer. So she was the first person that I called. How does it work? So let's start with what you just said, especially in sales. So we actually focus really heavily in sales. So if you went to our website, you'd see like, we are expert sales recruiters. There's a whole nother story. I won't bore you with those details, but I will tell you, it is hard. It is very, 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 very hard to find great salespeople. And what do we want to do? Like, we want the biggest challenges, because we know that there is the most opportunity in the biggest challenges. Why do less than 10% of recruiting shops do sales recruiting? Because it's hard. Most recruiters, they figure out like, what's the easiest, how are they going to make some money? And that's what they do. So when you talk about like process, first we bring you in, and it's a 90-minute call. Yes, we want to know what it is you're looking for, the experience, the expertise, adjacent industries, everything like that. When I've gotten hiring wrong in the past, it's not because I couldn't read a resume. It's not because I couldn't say, oh, like, do they have the experience, the expertise? Did I ask the right questions? It's because they weren't the right core value. They weren't the right culture fit for the organization. And so we spend about half our time during our 3-step interview or 3-interview process digging into like, who is that human, what drives them, and what are the guardrails in which they make decisions and take action. Because half of your battle is making sure that human aligns with the core values of the organization. And then the one thing that I'll leave you with is this: the best salespeople are not on Indeed. And like, I get it. It's hard to say this on LinkedIn, and I get in fights about this all the time. And it's really, sometimes it's fun. The best salespeople are not on Indeed. They're not on LinkedIn. The best salespeople are selling. That's what they're doing. And so the best salespeople need to be hunted. So the way that you find the best salespeople is you have access to a database of every professional profile imaginable. And then you sort and organize by who you think might be good for this role. And then recruiting is actually a sales act. You pick up the phone and you start calling. And that's what we do. So We are calling, we are texting, we are emailing, we are LinkedIn connecting and DMing, because active outreach to passive candidates is the only way that you find amazing sales reps.
Wow. Okay. I love it. I love the process. I love that. I'm going to take that away from this. You know, the best salespeople are out there selling. They're not on Indeed and LinkedIn. So I like that. So what does it cost to find a sales guy?
Yeah. So we have a flat monthly rate. So it's like the subscription program from the Hunt to Killer days, except instead of $30 a month, we charge $6,200 a month. When you think about sales recruiting or like time to fill, our average placement is about 43 days. So when clients are coming to us and they're trying to figure out what that budget is, it generally is somewhere in the 12,000 range. But every month we've got clients that that find their next hire in the first month and they pause before we get to the second month, and we're just as excited as they are, because what we know, the secret there is that the next time they've got a hire, they're coming back to us because of speed, efficiency, and quality. And so we celebrate alongside of them if we can find them an amazing hire in less than a month.
I mean, that's a fantastic cost, because if your recruiter is charging anywhere between, on the low end, 15%, on the high end, 30%, and you've got a $200,000 salary or a $300,000 salary, that is I mean, that can be up to $90,000 on a check.
That's what we spent for our CFO, $90,000.
I believe it, right?
Yeah.
I've spent a lot of money on recruiters too, and so that sounds like a really good deal. Like, that sounds like, man, I'm getting a real, like, if I want to put it in $6,200, okay, you know, okay, for the first month I'm into this thing. You said 43 days, so it's anywhere between, I'm guessing, 10 to 12K roughly. I know you said 12K. You know, to find that person, to get that match. But the flip is that instead of just breezing through resumes, picking the ones that stand out and look the best, and then, you know, cold selling the buyer on the other end, you're actively recruiting these people, you're actively hunting them, you're actively going after them, and you're trying to put the right people in the right seats. But you lead with core values, which is, you know, that's another great piece of EOS, right? Managing our core values, what we're about. But when those core values align, then you have long-term employees, and long-term employees are one of the things that enables you to succeed, right? Processes plus people equals success. And when we use that algorithm, then we're going to be very successful, and you're helping to fill that void on the people side, but you're leading with core values. When you decided that that's how you were going to build this business, I got to know, like, how did you decide to lead with core values? How did you decide to lead with a subscription base? Like, because that is so contrary to the industry. I mean, it seems like it's going to be very disruptive, or is very disruptive, but just the pricing model, the way that you're going about it, like, if I'm listening to this call, if I'm in business, I mean, I at least have to give it a shot, right? Like, I at least have to say, okay, maybe it's too good to be true. I don't know. Maybe it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. I don't know. But for a subscription fee of $6,200 to find a $300,000 employee, and it's going to take me approximately 43 days on average, I mean, I got to give that a whirl. I'm going to spend more on that on the Indeed that just auto drafts because we forgot to turn off the ad thing, right? So, like, how did you come up with it?
Yeah, I think a couple things here. The one thing is, like, when people are like, gosh, it's so cheap, it goes to show you how much they're being ripped off, because we're able to do this on healthy margins.
Yeah.
So now go think about recruiters that are charging $90,000, how much they're making off their hires. And I put a whole thing. So, like, we spent a whole year taking my LinkedIn profile and connecting it with recruiters. And then we spent like 3 months just poo-pooing on the recruiters and the industry and the model. Just so they could come in, and then we got in fun arguments about all this stuff. The reality is this: there is very high margin in recruiting, and the other issue that's in contingent recruiting is they're working for maybe 6 clients, but maybe out of those 6 clients, they only get 2 or 3 placements. So they're doing a lot of free work, a lot of free churn and burn. So they're moving very fast, and they're just trying to sell the clients. Our whole thing is, like, it's not a churn and burn. It's like we have a proven process in place and we follow that proven process. The thing that I learned that I think most business service providers are sleeping on is recurring revenue compounds. And so when I was in Hunt to Killer, the biggest aha moment was like, I'm only selling $30 subscription boxes, but somehow this year we did 47 million in these $30 subscription boxes. How did we do that? We did it through subscription. We did it through recurring revenue. We did it through productizing the actual business model itself. And so when we got into this, like the whole thought process here is like, let's not like do free work for clients and then like dilute the experience for everybody. Let's just charge a decent rate and do great work for everybody. Now, I will tell you, there was a little bit of holding the breath on this one because like we came up with the pricing, the business model, everything else before we had a client. And so there's a lot of pieces operationally that had to come together. Sure. Where if they wouldn't have, like, you know, we might have been like, oh, this is why it's so expensive to recruit. But no, they did not. It's not expensive to recruit. It's like do good work, have proven processes, the licenses, everybody kind of takes their pound of flesh because, you know, LinkedIn licenses. I mean, these things are like $2,000 a month per user. Everybody knows the secret inside of the recruiting industry is everybody knows how big the margins are. So anybody that's creating software or databases, everybody's taking advantage of that.
You know, the interesting thing here is that, you know, I don't feel like the service at Talent Harbor is cheap. I feel like it brings great value to a business. I mean, a business that's scaling and growing is always got a need for recruiting. So if I look at it like I've got to find top talent, I want A players on my team. B and C players aren't going to take me where I need to go. I know that, you know, 20% of my team is going to do 80% of my work. If I'm going to scale, I've got to even that out. So I need great people. If I need great people, then it's going to be very hard, like you said, to find them on Indeed. You're not going to find great people on Indeed. It just doesn't happen, right? You're going to get your B and C players off of Indeed, but you're not going to get A players off of Indeed. So what do? You go to a recruiter and you hope that you get that A player, and you do that hard work and you tell the recruiter, listen, I'll give you an extra 5% if you bring me the top cream of your, you know, of your pool. You work them as hard as you can. You try to get the best guarantee. Normally it's 90 days, whatever, but you're trying to get the best out of them. And then as you grow and you scale and the millions of dollars in your organization start to add up, because that's what happens in business, like you grow or you go out of business. And then you decide, hey, listen, I'm going to bring on my own recruiter. And so you get into this thing where you're like, I can do this for cheaper. So I'm going to pay this guy $110,000 and I'm going to give him $3,000 every time he brings somebody on. I don't know. And we've got 30 roles to fill this year. So, you know, he can make an extra $90,000. He can make $200,000, you know, whatever it is. I don't know. But you build that scenario out and now you're doing it in-house, but now you've got someone to manage. And then they, you know, what happens if they leave? And you've got all this stuff that's going on. Internal recruiting. And if I look at this, I can put this into one of my companies and it costs me $6,200 a month, roughly $75,000 a year. I'm saving $25,000 and I don't have to pay the taxes. I don't have to deal with the management. I don't have to deal with the person. But in a scaling company, I'm always recruiting. Like I need a sales guy. I need an HR guy. I need a CFO. Like there's all these positions that we're constantly trying to fill with A players. It seems to me like a no-brainer for a scaling company to come in and just say, let's just push the button and go. And then every time we have a position, we'll roll it through the program. We'll try to get the top contenders that we can out of it. And for $75,000, it's a rounding error when I'm getting the best talent in the market. I mean, I don't know. That's how I see it from a scaling perspective.
Yeah. Do you want to be our hype man? Because like we need this. You're absolutely right. And I think I've learned this the hard way too, so many times in business, is like when I start doing the math of like, oh, it's cheaper to bring it in-house. And then I think I'm going to get the same like quality of service. So I'll tell you, with Hunt to Killer, the amount of times that we brought paid advertising in-house and then put it back out of house, because like
it's ping pong.
The people that do it good, it's like Brembo brakes. Like, you know, you don't have a Brembo steering wheel. Like when you don't have a Brembo seat. Like when you want the best brakes in the world, you go to Brembo. And that's all Brembo focuses on, is the best brakes. And that's how we see ourselves, is like, yes, you can hire a recruiter internally. It's going to be a coin flip if they're good or not. Now you've got to track them, you got to manage, you've got to set up KPIs. We have all of that. Like, one thing that we're doing every single week as a part of the search is, like, you have full access to a dashboard inside of our software where you can see everybody we looked at, everybody we reached out to, everybody that we had a conversation to, and everybody that's made it through. So you might only see one amazing candidate each week, but we have gone through 100 resumes, trying to reach out to 75 of them. We only were able to connect with 35 of them. And it's just, it very much is a sales process, but I don't know. Recruiting's a core competency, and it's hard, and we think we're doing something different. So
it's the most important part of your business, right? Like, they will tell you, if you ask a smart person, I'll caveat it with that. They'll ask you, what's the most important decision you ever make in your life? It's who you marry, right? So that's recruiting in and of itself, right? I got to be out there recruiting. I'm hustling. I got to find the right person. Do they meet all of the, things that I'm looking for? And do our values align, right? Very important in marriage. Well, it's really that same thing with an employee. And in some level, it can cost you more. It can cost you more than a divorce, right? Putting the wrong person in a seat can cost your business millions of dollars, and it can cost you millions of dollars in opportunity lost, right? Because you can lose a client that could have been a multi-million-dollar client. So having the right person is so mission critical to your success. Like, there's 3 million people that have watched this show in the last 12 months. Like, at the end of the day, that's an entrepreneurial base. They're all of these people are building businesses. But the number one lesson to any of those people out there listening is, don't sacrifice talent. Don't ever sacrifice talent. Look to always add A players to the team. A players attract A players. A players have networks. And what you've done is you've provided a value-driven system for me to tap into A players without getting hustled at a cost that I can put on my P&L, profit and loss, and I can run that, right, at something that I can manage without turning it off, and replace the need for an internal employee or a recruiter that's basically going to take me to the cleaners, and I can just make this a part of my business system. And I think that's what I love about it, is it becomes like an EOS. It becomes a part of my everyday go-to-business strategy. Is I don't have just a recruiter. I have a recruiting partner who's invested in helping me grow my business and scale my business with A players through a system that's affordable, that I can add to the bench without saying, oh my God, how am I going to afford that? And my thing is, how do you not afford this?
Yeah. You're definitely hiring you as the hype man. I 100% agree. And, like, what are the things that you have a whole team assigned to you. Like, it's not, you don't have like one recruiter. You're not managing that recruiter. Like, we're proactively sending you all of the things that you need to see. But, like, what are the things that we're taking care of on the back end? Like, we're the ones that are making sure that we have access to the best information, the best databases. We're the ones that are constantly vetting the best softwares to make sure that we're tracking and managing everything correctly. We're the ones that are training our entire team on a weekly basis to the iterations, the things that we're seeing, the things that are working. These are just kind of all the things
I love it, man.
That go into
I love it. It's a fundamental. This has been an amazing show. We got to bring this thing in for a landing. We went way over time, but we had a blast doing it. It felt like it was a 15-minute call, even though I don't know how many minutes it was, but it was a great show. I got 2 final questions that I got to get out here in the next 4 minutes, and I got to make it simple. But number one tip you would give for any entrepreneur out there in business today?
Find a peer group. 100%, hands down. There's nothing else, because like everything else you can find within that peer group. I found EOS. You can find framework. You can find, how to grow, how to scale. Find a peer group.
Okay, I love it. That's a fantastic tip. I agree 1,000%. Final question. We've got a big blank whiteboard. It's a billboard. It's on the side of the road. You've got one word, one sentence, one phrase that you can share with the world. What do you want to share with the world?
Hire great talent.
Hire great talent. I love it. I love it. And you know what? It's got to come back to self. So I love it. That's it. And I also agree with that 100%, man. You got to hire great talent. Listen, it's been absolutely fantastic having you on the show. Where can people find you, find your information? Are you on LinkedIn? Are you on Facebook, Instagram? Where are you hanging out socially?
Yeah, easiest way is probably just to go to Talent Harbor /Ryan. All my information's there. My email, LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so I love connecting with entrepreneurs. And the only thing that I would say is, like, don't think you have to reach out to me for a sales thing. Like, I just love jamming on ideas and soundboarding and everything else. So it's like, if you just want to talk to another entrepreneur, hit me up, because I am very much less about sales, almost to the detriment, but very less about sales and more just about meeting cool humans.
Awesome. I love it. So do yourself a favor. One, get with Talent Harbor. That's like a must. Check it off your list. If you're thinking about what is the top 3 things I got to do this week, put Talent Harbor at the top. Go hit them up. Number 2, go connect with Ryan on LinkedIn. Hit him up at Talent Harbor. Do yourself a favor. Do that. This has been the Entrepreneurial Journey. I'm your host, Dave Westcott. Join us 9:15 a.m. Pacific Standard Time every single Tuesday. We're here hanging out. If you like the show, give us a like, give us a share, drop your comments into the comment box. Thank you so much for being on the show, Ryan. It's been absolutely incredible spending the last hour with you. You've literally blown my mind, and I think you have like the greatest idea that I've heard on the show over like 400 shows. So congratulations. It's been awesome hanging out.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Dave. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Mike Bott from Frost Solutions, one of the owners of the company. What we do is provide a mini weather station to give you a tailored forecast to those particular locations, so you know where and when and what to do in those parts of town. You know there's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different ways that people can experience tremendous value having a technology like this.
Introducing the all-new Western Enforcer V-Plow. Engineered with all the features, efficiency, and performance of full-size Western V-Plows, built specifically for your half-ton truck. For more information, visit westernplows.com.